property owner is requesting after-the-fact approvals of a variance to allow a patio and improvements near the home to remain within the 7.5-foot side yard setback, CUP and variance for tiered retaining walls constructed within the 75-foot setback and within 5 feet of the side yard. Applicant has identified the irregular lot lines, the existing home's orientation as practical difficulties supporting the requested variances. They provided a practical difficulty summary, which is included in your packet as Exhibit C. Based on the property's width, the side yard setback flexibility can be applied, reducing the side yard setback from 10 feet to 7.5. Therefore, the patio stairs and improvements should meet that 7.5-foot setback. As constructed, they extend up to and across the property line. Our code allows walls within a lake yard via conditional use permit issued by the City Council. The walls are approximately 43 inches tall plus a capstone. According to the code, new walls within the shore setback zone must be designed to correct an established erosion problem, be suitable given the demonstrated need, designed by a registered engineer or landscape architect, depending on the scope of the project, and designed to be the minimum size necessary to control the erosion problem. The property owner provided opinions from a professional engineer and arborist as to the necessity and appropriateness of the retaining wall improvements. Additional information from the landscape professionals who installed the walls was submitted this afternoon and placed in front of your seats. Additionally, the retaining walls taller than 2 feet must meet a 5-foot side yard setback. Tiered walls in the lake yard extend up to and across the property line. Staff finds the retaining walls within the 75-foot lake yard appear to provide a benefit regarding stormwater runoff and may be appropriate and necessary to protect the trees and the integrity of the slope. The existing landscaping around and in front of the walls does not adequately screen walls from the lake. Additional vegetative screening should be implemented. Regarding the patio area, the portions that were replaced in kind, the portions of the improvements that were replaced in kind or in the area of a previously existing improvement are able to be replaced or maintained. The new elements and those that encroach into the side yard setback should be removed or modified so they don't adversely impact the neighboring property, particularly from a drainage standpoint. Since publication, several public comments have been submitted, and we emailed them to you today, and they have been printed for your review and are placed at your seats this evening. Those public comments should be acknowledged and included in the public record. Staff has not identified practical difficulties in the land that support granting setback variances for the new encroachments. While the lot lines are not parallel to the home as the property owner assumed, each of the improvements is subject to construction permits. Had permits been requested, property lines and setbacks could have been identified and clarified. The property has conforming locations to support patio improvements. The engineer's analysis of the retaining walls within the 75-foot lake yard indicates the walls are necessary to stabilize this part of the slope, improve stormwater infiltration, and correct an erosion control condition. The retaining walls within the 75-foot setback must be modified to meet a 5-foot setback and screened to preserve the natural shoreline view from the lake. Staff recommends, denial of the setback variances and approval of the conditional use permit for the retaining walls with the conditions modified and modifications already noted. Tonight, the Planning Commission should consider one or more of the following motions: approval as applied, or denial of the application as applied and provide direction to the applicant, or a partial approval including approval of the conditional use permit for retaining walls within the lake yard with conditions for screening and wall modifications meeting the side setback as necessary, and denial of the setback variances for the improvements near the home and the lake slope walls and the patio. To accommodate a safe landing and access to the area, it may be necessary to modify the patio landing to meet the 7.5-foot setback. I can answer questions if you have any. There are a number of exhibits that I have. I can put up whatever was in the packet that you'd like to see. I know the applicant is here and would like to speak. I stand for questions.
Any questions for staff?
Just one question, just as I look through and try and wade through everything that's been presented. I understand the necessity sometimes for retaining walls. What is the city's view if that necessity is a result of removing vegetation that was holding the landscape before? If this wasn't an erosion issue because there was vegetation there to hold it in place, and then a homeowner removes all of that vegetation and now it becomes an erosion issue, does that then qualify for a retaining wall or not?
It's not necessarily a qualification for a retaining wall or a disqualification. I mean, I think we deal with vegetation removal when we become aware of it and try to restore or get compliance in replacing that vegetation or replanting something in
so
that
the
area.
preference would be to keep the vegetation.
Our preference is always vegetative solutions for erosion, stability. The code does allow, though, for a conditional use permit. So we don't really have a...
No, you said exactly what I was looking for, and I apologize, I worded it horribly wrong, but I was trying to understand which is the preference. Is it vegetation or is it clear the vegetation?
Always a natural slope is our preference.
Mr. Chair, just a question for staff. Go ahead. So, Ms. Curtis, I know this is complicated, so I just want to make sure I'm getting it right. Conditional use permit is, of course, triggered here because of the setbacks to the lakeshore, but the trigger for the variance is because the what's identified as retaining wall is greater than 2 feet. Otherwise, if it was not greater than 2 feet, it would not be a variance. It would just be a conditional use permit. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yep, retaining walls 2 feet or lower are allowed to be within that 5-foot setback.
Okay. Another question, and this, I apologize if this is not the time or the place, but when you have this existing on 2 structures, would this application carry over, or would that be a separate application to approve? If it were to stay, I'm not saying it is. Would the neighboring property have to apply for the same thing?
Are you talking about the
Permit.
portions of the improvement that are across the property line? That is dealt with with that property.
Okay, so that would be it.
It's not part of his application.
Got it. And again, it's more so just out of curiosity, you know, when you have, that doesn't come up very often where you've got a conditional use permit for one, but now if it's encroaching into a neighboring property because the neighbors agreed to do it, that the other neighbor would have to apply for it on their own as well.
This is something that could be applied for jointly and applied
Got
to
it.
both properties in one application had it come forward that way, but that is not
Okay.
what happened.
And again, I apologize, it's just for education, because I just haven't seen that before. So thank you for that clarification. That's all I have, thank you.
Any other questions from staff?
Just one, as I'm learning. Is there a requirement for a variance for the fire pit as well? Or would there have been? And I'm just asking just to learn, right? If I wanted to put a fire pit on that by the lake, would I need to?
Very few improvements are permitted within the 75-foot setback. There appeared to answer your question, no, that's not allowed. That structure is not allowed. I looked back at aerial photos. I was unable to determine exactly when that structure, because I think there was something there. But yeah, I don't have definitive information about that.
Okay, but if it wasn't there yesterday, it would have been
Yes.
Last question for staff. If this were structure, obviously, I think your recommendations probably would change as far as conditional use permits are concerned, because it would be a variance. This is a retaining wall, which has a different perspective. And just restating what you already clarified, it would just be a conditional use permit if those retaining walls did not exceed 2 feet in height.
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I have my head on straight.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? The applicant is here and wish to speak. Please approach the podium. State your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Brian Roath at 1200 Wildhurst Trail. Thank you for the opportunity to give you some color commentary on our application tonight. First, we regret the need to be here and take your time for this matter, but in 2021, we made some improvements to our property. We are here to ask for permits for that work after the fact. Had we understood what we needed, that we needed these permits, we would have gone through that process then. So we apologize and looking forward to resolving this in a fair and reasonable way, and then getting on with our lives. The application covers 2 areas of landscaping improvements. First, I'll address the patio area. We are looking to expand the patio in a way that enhances our enjoyment of the lakeside property. On the surface, this should be a simple request, but as you see, the root problems date back to the 70s when our home was built. While the house was proposed and approved by the city to adhere to 10-foot setbacks, side setbacks, it was not constructed that way. You can go to page 27, please.
What is page 27? I'm sorry. Is that this? What do you want?
You can go back to the previous one. Yeah, that's fine. So through this process, we've discovered that much of our decked stairs, patio, and outdoor living areas sit within the side setback. We look squarely out of our kitchen, and instead of seeing our lakeshore and dock, we see the neighbor's lakeshore and dock. When the patio was expanded, it encroached on our neighbor's property by a few inches. We fully intend to remove the encroachment. Our request for you tonight is to allow a small area of quote-unquote new patio to exist within the side setback in order to easily transition from the allowed patio landing from our deck to the new patio area. On page 19, you will see the original, this one right here, you will see the original patio, the existing patio, and a proposed modified patio configuration. So let me pause for a second. So,
If I can interrupt for just a moment, I think you might help Ms. Curtis, rather than the page number, to identify what document you're looking for, because a lot of times, instead of having it as one contiguous form, it's attachments.
okay, yeah.
It might help her and us see the illustration that you're
Yep.
trying to point out.
So you can see the green area, like she's highlighted, was the existing, the pre-existing patio landing, and then the existing patio, or the pre-existing patio, is the dotted line that's above the 9-foot patio extension label. It goes from the west to the east. Yeah. We extended the patio towards the lake, and in doing so, because the property line, we didn't know it at the time, but because the property line is where it's at, the further we went out, the more it converged towards the property line.
Can I stop you there for a second?
Yeah, of course.
So just for clarification, so we all know what we're looking at. The green was a landing off of an existing patio.
Right. Yeah, landing for the deck stairs coming down. Yeah.
Got it.
It was part of the previous patio.
And the patio extension that's in red is the part of the new patio that's over the setback line.
Correct.
But that entire 9-foot patio is new.
The what?
The entire 9-foot patio is new, correct?
Yeah, the 9-foot patio extension that goes
Okay.
all the way to the left. Yeah.
Okay.
So what you'll see is there's a dotted line that has the label R6.83 feet. That is one way that we would propose to modify the patio. We have some existing steps that are, thank you, that are within the setback that we are proposing to move outside the setback. The way that Melanie drew the line there, they're actually in the setback, and that's not the intent. The intent is to move those steps outside the setback, wherever that setback is. But the dotted arc is what we'd ask for, or something that we can continue down the stairs onto the landing, and then down, there's another step right there, onto the new patio, and so that we can continue over towards the new patio extension.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
Was the work performed by a licensed contractor?
Yes.
And the contractor did not ask if you had a permit?
No.
Just a question on this, was anything done during this to prevent the runoff from going into the neighbor's property?
To prevent runoff. So the hill comes down parallel with the side of the house there. That's where the runoff comes, kind of down this way.
So then it runs into his yard?
No, it doesn't run, his yard is to the right.
Correct. So it runs down the right side, when I'm looking at your property, down the right side of the fence, down the right side of the stairs, which looks from this, goes through the mulch and into his yard.
Yes, yeah, as it did before.
But now you're increasing it because it's gaining more from the hard cover that's adjacent to the property line, so you're adding more water going into his yard. Because it's coming off your house, going onto the pavers, going onto the pavers extension, now going more into his yard, right? So you're increasing the amount of water that's flowing over into his yard because you're in that setback.
I suppose it goes to his yard anyways because of the way that
But if
the house
that's,
is oriented.
I guess the reason I'm asking, or saying this is because if that patio extension wasn't there, you would have earth to absorb some of that water, not add more
True.
water to it.
True.
And hence my question, what did this company do to mitigate that? Or has anything been done to mitigate that? Or are you presenting anything to mitigate that water from running off?
No, not here. I mean, we have the rock mulch there to do that. You asked a question earlier before I came up about the vegetation, the natural vegetation that's further down. So there's quite a distance between the patio that we're talking about here and the lakeshore. A lot of distance between the patio and the retaining wall. There had been an unimproved area above the above where the retaining wall is right now. That's what we removed, okay? But the slope from the top, from our patio down to the lake, I don't know what the slope is, but it goes and then it increases quite a bit by where the retaining wall is. The vegetation that we removed was above the wall on this lower slope area. Just wanted to
Okay.
comment that. So, any other questions? Otherwise, I'll continue, right? Okay.
Can I,
So, yeah,
can I ask how the property line is maintained?
is what?
Maintained?
How the property line's maintained?
Yes, like, in many circumstances, neighbors are mowing to a line, or, you didn't have a survey done, but would you have a reasonable expectation to know where the property line is based on how you're maintaining
Before
your
the survey.
properties?
Well, before this spring, it was a continuous yard that goes from ours up to the neighbor's property. So there was no delineation of where the property line is.
And it's grass and it's mowed?
It's mowed, yeah. Yep.
And so there's a line to which you mow?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
And neighbors had been there for years before we moved in 2025. What we knew about where the property line was, where he stopped mowing, and where we continued the mowing. So, back to the patio area. While a small amount of the new patio would be within the side setback, the small area, or the area is completely on our property, completely in front of our house, within the natural living space, and in no way impedes on the neighbor's use of their property. The second area of improvement for consideration tonight is the retaining wall near the lake. For the most part, I rely on experts to speak for themselves. Attached in your packet is a letter of support from our civil engineer. He brings years of experience and explains in the letter the purpose of the wall and the benefits, including erosion control, hillside stability, and water runoff management, etc. One thing I want to highlight as background is that when we bought the house in 2015, most of the backyard was overgrown with shrub trees, buckthorn, and other weeds. I'm sure it was like that for years prior. We improved the area uphill from where the wall stands today. It looks great, but one downside of installing grass is that the runoff and erosion downstream became more of a problem, even with the vegetation in the hill. That's when in 2021 we started looking into a retaining wall. In your packet is a second letter of support from a certified arborist. He explains that the oak trees are healthy and thriving, and that the retaining wall is likely a big part of that. Also in your packet, which came today, is an email from a landscaper who was on the team constructing the wall. He also is a trained arborist with a degree in urban forestry. During planning for the wall in 2021, he expressed concern for the health of the oak trees and thought the trees were not long for life. But he has seen firsthand that these trees have turned the page and are no longer stressed. He argues that the retaining wall is the reason why they are still alive, and modifying the placement of the wall may jeopardize their health. Lastly is a letter of support from the landscaper who constructed the wall. He details a conversation with us and the neighbors about the rationale for the placement of the wall extending onto their property. Everyone was on the same page then, and from then forward, we considered this a shared wall between neighbors. I know that that's not what the situation is today, but I wanted to bring that up to make you understand that we are not cowboys out there trying to break the law or go against the ordinance. We had good intentions to include the neighbor in this, in solving the problem for both of us. In the years following the construction, the neighbors started expressing concerns about the retaining wall, not about the look of the wall or the function of the wall. The driving concern seemed to be that the placement of the retaining wall made their property look smaller than it is. So this spring, they delineated the property line using plants, to your point earlier. Now there's a string of arborvitae bushes that go down the property line. So now we know where the property line is. With that, we had hoped that their concerns had been addressed and there would be a joint applicant for the CUP tonight. So as you've heard, there were legitimate, well-intentioned reasons for the placement of the wall within the 5-foot setback as required by Section 612 and across the property line. Since receiving the staff analysis last week, we now better understand Section 612 and that there's a distinction made between 2-foot walls and 4-foot walls as permitted exceptions to the side setback. Our question for tonight is whether tree health is a reason why retaining walls are permitted within the side setback area. If not, we would request that this matter be tabled and not voted on tonight, and allow us to consider what options B and C might look like that adhere to a 5-foot setback. We would plan to bring these alternates back to you for your consideration. Thank you for your time, and I'm willing to answer any more questions.
Thank you. Question real quick for staff. Is it 9-foot or 5-foot setback for the retaining walls? The 5, okay. And thank you for walking us through that. I know there's a lot of moving pieces here. I think that was helpful for myself, for sure. Any other questions? Sure, Ressler.
Yes, couple of questions. So I appreciate you giving some color and illustration as to kind of how you got here. I can empathize with that. I mean, certainly it seems very plausible that there might be misunderstandings. With that said, can you comment? It sounds like, if I'm hearing and understanding, it sounds like you're working on trying to correct this where you're not encroaching on the property line. Is that correct?
Yes, the patio, we're, proposing tonight a modification, and we're certainly willing to change that modification even further based on your feedback.
Okay. So it sounds like you're willing to fix that.
Yes.
Okay, that's good. And the other follow-up question I had to that would be, knowing that you know, 24 inches in height is a little bit of a demarcation point. Just looking at pictures, I have not been on site and I apologize for that. Is there a possibility, just knowing how that looks like it's stepped, is there, and again, I'm not here to redesign and I'm not a landscape architect, but is there a way that you can make that step a little bit shallower where what appears to be right now a higher height, you fill that in and it now becomes the backfill supporting the retaining wall where you stay within 24 inches. But
Yeah, so just make sure that I understand, you're talking about over by the trees, both tiers of the wall.
I mean, the simple one is there a way that you can have this result in what you're intending, which is to protect those trees
Yeah.
from erosion, but still maintaining what's classified as a retaining wall at 24 inches or less?
Yeah, that's the question at hand. Like I mentioned, I didn't understand
Yeah.
612
Right.
until we got it on Friday. So I didn't understand that, I thought that there was an exception for all retaining walls, not the difference between the 4 foot and the 2 foot. So
Yeah.
it's news to me that I would ask, some time, we would need some time to work through that.
Sure. Yeah, and that's, I mean, look, it's hard to keep track. I'm on the planning commission and I have to ask staff all the time for clarification because I'm not smart enough to remember everything. So I can understand that. More importantly is just to understand intent, right? So do you intend to see if you can, because again, you're probably not a landscape architect, so you're going to have to ask one, hey, is there a way that we can redesign this where we're 24 inches or less? And can we redesign this where we're not encroaching on the property next door while still accomplishing what we're trying to accomplish? And then the landscape architect says yes or no, and then maybe you come back with what it
Yeah.
is. Of course, I just want to know what that intent is because I don't want to go and propose something that you're not able to do.
Yeah, no, I
wanting
appreciate
to
that.
do.
But I had one question for staff on that, not to put you on the spot for code, but there is a restriction on the how close the tiers are together, correct?
Yes.
So the more tiers we put in there, I mean, the shorter it is, the more tiers we'd have to put in there, and the closer the tiers would have to come together. I don't know what that is, but I can tell you, I didn't choose to put the hill where it is, but the fact of the matter is it is, and there's not much I can do about that, so.
So tiered walls, the setback doesn't change. The tiered walls, not separated by twice the height of the lower wall, require an engineered design, no matter where they are on the property. So, turning the wall into the property or adding another tier or something, it would just, your engineer would need to make sure that that's structurally sound.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And what is the code? It's twice the height of the bottom lower wall. So if the lower wall is 2 feet, then it can only be 4 feet.
Without having it engineered, it would need to be over 4 feet, but where you are on the property requires engineering. So you're kind of in there anyway. The setback would remain the same.
Regardless of the height of the walls, it's going to require an engineer design
Yeah.
because of the location of them. But I think what you're saying is there's a minimum separation between walls based on the height of the existing walls. Taller the wall, the more separation you need. But if you were to reduce the walls to 2 feet, that doesn't necessarily mean you need more walls because you could have slope between the 2 walls.
Does that make sense?
So, but it's something that we can't decide. It's obviously,
Yeah, right, I agree.
I'm not an engineer,
No.
but there's different ways to
Yeah, no,
to make it work, right? So,
Just going back to vegetation, if you could bring up this slide. It looks from this slide that you've got a similar slope, similar issue on the left side of the walkway down, and then, I don't know if we can show it, but the submission from Rasmussen, their comment,
I can. I was waiting for them to give their public comment.
apologize, I hope I don't troop it up, I just want, there's one picture.
See it. It's on this picture.
I wanted to see the neighbor's yard, that's,
It's on the picture. It's right here. Yeah.
No, the other neighbor's yard, sorry.
I think I can anticipate your questions about this side of our property that has vegetation, right?
Yep, so my question is, looking at the property that's down, I don't know what direction, that property right there, looking at their prior permit, the elevation looks like it goes from their yard, clear across your yard to Rasmussen's yard. So I'm questioning if you need the retaining wall on the right side of the walkway down to the lake, do you then also need it on the left side because you have the same slope? Or is it because of the vegetation that's there right now that you don't need it?
Well, we are not seeing the same signs of erosion on that side. And I believe the problem, or the reason is because the water comes downhill. First of all, there's some vegetation in between there. The water that comes down through the yard first hits the path and redirects the water down the path instead of over the path down the hill.
But then your neighbors aren't seeing the same issue and needing a retaining wall?
You're talking about the neighbors right
Yep.
there. Their slope is different on that side.
Isn't the slope steeper on that side? Yeah.
They have more of a, they've further back the lakeshore, and then it gradually goes up, yeah. They have, ours starts out slower and then increases as it goes down the hill, whereas theirs is a more consistent slope. And I believe it also slopes into they have a culvert right down by the word vertical there. They have a culvert right there that I believe that a lot of the runoff goes that direction as well.
And I know this is not the time for our discussion, it's more questions for you as an applicant, so I wasn't going to get into it, but it might help Commissioner Welton on this one. When I was reading the arborist report, I mean, understanding it, it seemed like the spirit of the retaining wall, or at least the most pressing from reading that, was to try to save those oak trees.
Yeah, and I'm just asking the question because it very well could be that if they were healthy oak trees before, that all mounted because they removed the vegetation around it, and then would it not be better to put the vegetation back?
Yeah.
It's kind of where, like, that's where I keep leaning to this and why I'm asking the questions about vegetation's working over here. Could you not just put the vegetation back instead of these walls?
What alternatives were considered prior to putting in the wall to address erosion?
We could have left it.
Yeah.
You know, it was unimproved area, and it was starting to gully out in the center there. I didn't explore trying to replace the hillside there and then put vegetation in.
How did you go about removing the buckthorn and other vegetation that was there?
Up above? With my hands. I mean, I don't know what the question was, or if you
So
want
you-
more than
you-
that, but I
you did
came
it
here and
with your
used
hands
one of the
versus
tools here that is available and took out the buckthorn, and then, you know, there's other non-buckthorn type of stuff that we just rototilled out.
Any other questions right now for the applicant?
Just real quick, going back to the porch, sorry, staff, to have you jumping around here. I was just going to ask, in your proposal, are you, because you mentioned pushing back the new porch development and abiding, or there it is, perfect. Would you bring the porch, that red line, back all the way to where the pre-existing structure was in the redesign? Or would there still be some of that red space occupied after?
Yeah, I'm requesting that well, at least the small triangle that's on the left side, top left. Yeah, that remain, and then maybe a diagonal, or like I show here, an arced patio that allows us to come down the stairs, to hit the landing, come down the next stairs, and then transition over to the patio. So it may not be where the dotted arc is right now. It was probably has to be further up to allow for just a transition over to the new patio area and where the new stairs will be.
Got it, that's helpful. Thanks for clarifying.
Quickly, if you don't mind, there's some comments from your engineer, it sounds like, regarding a conversation that was had with the neighboring property owners about where the retaining walls would end in terms of the trees down there.
Yeah.
Could you maybe expand on those conversations, and as well comment on if any conversations were had about the patio with your neighbor?
Yeah, no conversations were had about the patio. If you saw where the neighbor's property and home is, their relative, I mean, it was not the patio, and even the expanded patio right now, I feel is in our living area. I mean, it's right underneath our deck. It's right there. And so neither of us had understood where the property line was until the neighbor had a survey done. We were both surprised at the angle of the property line. We had both understood the property line to be a little bit more square to the shoreline. And so that meant that it was further up at the shoreline on this end, whereas at the road, we were surprised that it was further towards their property. So we had, and neither of us were right, but that's how we had lived. That right there is the as proposed drawing back in 1976, I believe, 1976, of our house. And you can see that there's a clear setback between the property line and our house there. This is not how it was constructed. The orientation was twisted so that, you know, the deck of our property, which is in the corner of the house right there, is almost encroaching on the setback and almost on their property.
Question, that's a proposed survey or an as-built survey?
This is, in 1976, we did not get as-built surveys.
Got it.
This is a proposed. The property lines have also been adjusted. I'm not sure of this is from 1964, on the original lots were adjusted. And then as you can see on the information that Hennepin County is showing, further adjustments have been made here on the south side of the applicant's property to accommodate either the angle of the home as it was constructed or something like that. I'm not sure. I wasn't able to really find a lot of documentation in our files.
Well, yeah, we share a path that goes between that home and our home, and there's an easement between the two, and may have been why, I don't know.
Any other questions for the applicant? Otherwise, I would like to take a short break prior to opening the public hearing. But if there's questions, we can continue.
I'm not going anywhere, so I can answer more questions.
Thank you. Can we take a short 5-minute break? We will reconvene here. I think, there we go. We're just about ready to open the public hearing for this item. Would anyone from the public wish to speak on this? If you do, please approach the podium, state your name and address for the record.
My name is Sandy Rasmussen. My husband Brian is here as well. We live at 1186 Wildhurst Trail. So we're the property adjacent to the Roths and subject to the encroachment. So we have lived at this property since 1991, about 34 years. So bear with me for a moment while I give you a little bit of context and history about these properties that I think can help a little give you some context. And, you know, really the message here that should come through is that, you know, setback zoning requirements matter. And this particular property has had just a cumulative number of non-conforming additions since that property was first developed. Well, let's go back to 1976. I did a lot of research as a part of this over the last 2 years. In 1996, when the build plan was reviewed by the Planning Commission, they actually have minutes documenting the approval to rotate the house to the north and provide a 6-inch variance for the northeast foundation corner into the 10-foot side setback. The reason for that was the house on the other side of the Roths was built over its property line. And so before the Cruisecrafts at the time were allowed to build their property, they had to negotiate a change in their property lines with the neighbors, and that's why you have that quirky little thing going on. So in order to accommodate the side setback for the building of that house, it was recommended that house be rotated, and then just the foundation could go 6 inches over. Sometime thereafter, the people who built that house, before we bought, added an asphalt walkway and a fire pit with seating at the shoreline. They added the deck and the screen porch, and those things. We always thought it was urban legend, but we were always told that when the water dripped off the railing of the deck, it dropped on our property. And I mean, we mentioned that from time to time with the Roths, but we had no documentation, no reason to worry about that. It was pre-existing. Later, when the Holland Horse bought the property, they added riprap to the shoreline, and I'm sure they had a permit for that, but that was more hardcover. And then after the Roths acquired the property in 2015, they added a 10 by 12 shed, approximately 8 feet tall, in the average lakeshore setback zone, and then later added the patio extension and the retaining wall, also within that setback zone. Top left is a picture of the Roths property from our perspective. You see those trees in the foreground, those are on our property. The orange temporary fencing there literally touches the railing coming down and crosses over the patio. On the bottom left, you see that non-conforming structure that was also added within that average lakeshore setback. I don't think there was a permit for that. And just because I think it's kind of interesting, you see the actual minutes there from that Planning Commission meeting where they said Mr. Kruscoff would have to alter his building plan by making a slight rotation of his house on the lot in addition to the change in the lot line variances. There would be this 6-inch variance. So that's just sort of a little bit of the history of how we got from before we purchased to today. On the left, of course, is what Mr. Roth was talking about, where he, in his after-the-fact permit request the first time through, put a drawing of the deck. And when we saw that in his application, we immediately started to do some research because we knew that could not possibly be correct. All of the drawings that you've seen today, the certified, what's the word I'm looking for? Surveys, thank you. Those were commissioned by us. We're the only ones who have paid for surveys. We've paid for surveys twice now. Why did we do a survey? I think that's a really important question. So because the Ross house is so close to our property, and all of the water from their roof flows through a gutter system and a long gutter that directs that water onto our property. And that water that flows between our homes has caused erosion for years. Not only that, but every time the house was resided, when the deck was rebuilt, when the roof was redone, all of the construction materials, all of the equipment, all of the back and forth from the back of the house to the front of the house, obviously was on our property, and we knew that, but we were good neighbors, we understood. But the erosion has been significant. So one day Mr. Roth says to me, yeah, my wife's talking to our landscaper, and we're thinking about doing some landscaping here between the houses. And I'm thinking, that's odd, that's all my property. So I talked to my husband, I said, you know, we really need to get a survey. If we're gonna do anything between the property, we need to know where that line is. And that's how we discovered the encroachments, okay? So this is the survey you see, as you've already seen in the previous presentation, the documentation of everything within the 10-foot. This is a 10-foot setback. We can just keep going. There you see the very first property marker that clued us in to the fact that that patio was encroaching. If you look at the top right, that's just a garden hose. And basically everything you see there is within that 10-foot setback. So that gives you a little bit more of a visual of the scope and the size of that patio that's in the 10 feet. Now, one of the things that I think there's a little confusion over, when Mr. Roth talks about the previous footprint, he used an aerial view from 2022. I mentioned, and he has mentioned, that he acquired that property in 2015. This is an aerial view from 2015, and I have spoken with the previous neighbors. The original patio ended at the inside of that post from that upper patio, okay? There was nothing in front of those steps. It was grass. You stepped on grass. So this expansion you're talking about today is the second expansion that the Roths did. The first one that he references as being pre-existing, yes, is pre-existing for the second expansion, but it was not there at the time that they acquired the house. If we can keep going. So we started with the problem at the house, and of course, that survey led to the discovery that now these sort of setback intrusions have been compounded by the retaining wall. I will show you some pictures, but prior to that wall, as I think he mentioned, that lakefront area did contain brush, trees, grasses. I will tell you from my perspective, nobody would have walked in there because it was so thick. I was not aware of any erosion. You wouldn't see the roots of the trees because they were covered by brush and trees and grasses. Nobody did any maintenance. It was just like other properties on Lake Minnetonka. It was just natural. And as you've seen, and you'll see again in a minute, the property on either side of that wall basically has a very similar slope and doesn't experience any erosion today. I searched long and hard to find a picture for you of what that lakefront looked like. And so you can see there, that's what was there. That's pre-wall. If you look at the two trees on the right, the tree on the far right, something's odd about it, right? Because it looks like it's pretty much about the same level as the tree in the front. Now look at that tree in the wall. The tree is buried in that wall, okay? All right? So let's go to the next picture.
Can I ask you a clarifying question?
Sure.
I think you said it, but the two trees in the top picture and the two trees in the bottom picture, are those the same trees?
Yes, yep. Those are exactly the same two trees. And the third tree in the bottom picture is just sort of hidden in the top picture. So let's stay on the topic of those trees. If you look at the distance from each of those trees to the block in the retaining wall, it's 31 inches for one of the trees and it's 42 inches for the other tree. These are mature trees. They have 10, 15-foot drip lines. Where are the roots? Did we save the trees? No, these trees will, as our arborist has told us, will die in the next 5 years, whether that wall is there or not, because their roots have been removed, okay? So it's a convenient way to look at things, to say that that there were issues. But as you can see here, you can't see the root structures of these trees. They're gone. Bottom right is simply some arborvitae that we put into, I have to say that over the years, if you look on the left, it's kind of a visual of where the property line actually lies on the yellow. The orange is visually where your eye takes you with the wall. I probably have asked no less than 10 people who have come to mow the lawn, to rake the leaves, to maintain the wall, to not go past that second tree to the left. So there is ongoing and, trespass on our property, and our fear, and you'll see this in a minute, is that somebody's going to get hurt. And I'll tell you why, if we can just go to the next. It's my husband standing on the wall. As you can see, it's a very tall wall, okay? Now, my kids grew up on this property. They spent their lives sledding down that hill in the wintertime, okay? You sled down that hill and you hit that wall, somebody's going to get hurt, okay? If you're on that wall and you're doing maintenance and you back up and you fall off that wall, you're going to get hurt, okay? It is a very dangerously tall wall, okay? All right, so that's our primary concern in terms of the height of the wall. Everything you see from that temporary fencing to the right is the encroachment. We can just keep going. This is what our property looks like. If you look at that slope on the left, you don't see any erosion. That butts right up to that wall. So if you look at the far right of our property, you see a much steeper grade. No erosion. There is plenty of room between there and the lake. And this is just what we're used to. And very much the character of Forest Lake Bay. We can keep going. So just stepping back a little bit to look across the properties. Everything to the right of the long line is the encroachment. I'll talk about the 9-foot setback in just a minute because I believe it's by your zoning. I believe it should be a 9-foot setback, but I'll talk about why. And so you see a good 35–40% of that wall shouldn't be there. So when Mr. Roth talks about how we had some meeting, first of all, I never saw a drawing. There was no drawing. A guy came out and they started to build a wall, okay? There was no conversation about the building of a wall before they started building a wall, okay? There was no conversation about my trees and how we needed to protect my trees. In fact, if you wanted to protect my trees, you would have stopped that wall at that 9-foot point, okay? And not touched any of those trees, okay? You can see that bottom tree at the very bottom of that hill. There's no roots sticking out, okay? And of course, the one above it was also at that level. You just can't tell anymore. We can just keep going. These are just quick drawings. You've seen these before. Everything in the red box, from our perspective, is newly added since the Roths acquired the property and is within, I have 10 feet on there. I acknowledge it's 7.5, whatever it is. But my point is, whatever it is, the erosion is dramatic. I took pictures before I came today. It has become a ditch because of all the rain we have this summer. Let's keep going. That's the 9 feet from the wall. If we can just keep going, you've seen these before. This is why I think it's a 9-foot setback. So this is actual pulled out of your zoning requirements. So tiered walls are considered as one wall unless they're separated by a horizontal distance twice the height of the lower wall. That doesn't exist here, okay? Structures exceeding, and then structures exceeding the allowed height of a fence, so the total height shall be located so as to meet the required accessory structure setbacks established for that yard. So what are the accessory, or first of all, what's the height of a fence? So fences within the average lakeshore fence setback shall not exceed 42 inches in height. Well, this wall is clearly more than twice that in height. And for accessory uses, again, this is within our area, the side setback for lots that are non-conforming, which this is, it's 90 feet in width. It's the lesser of 10 feet or equal to 10% of the lot width, but no less than, that's 7.5 feet. 10% of 90 feet is 9 feet, so I ask that you have a 9-foot setback for the wall, if you decide to approve the conditional use permit. We can just go, I think I got one or two more. This is just a visual to kind of make the point that on a very narrow piece of property, these are the cumulative, non-conforming things in various setback areas. So that orange line is the average lakeshore setback line. Now, I have a 10-foot setback line. You know, that's just because that's what our surveyor put on the drawing. You have the retaining wall in the 75-foot setback, the fire pit seating. Now, I did not put in here the asphalt path that comes down because that's obviously allowed. And then the riprap, which again, I think was approved, but nevertheless makes the point that on a very small piece of property, there are a lot of non-conforming things that have accumulated and have an impact on us. If we could just go one more. The last thing I want to do is just share a few pictures we took around Forest Lake Bay. Because I think the single most significant thing you must consider in approving this conditional use permit is the precedence you are setting on a bay that pretty much the character is you might as well build a wall around the entire lake. Okay, so let's just look at a few of them. This was recently built on the point coming into Forest Lake Bay. I believe that the city required that that all be natural grass, and so this is before the grasses started to grow. Just, you can kind of keep going. Some pretty steep slopes across the bay from us. Again, grassy slopes like ours. More grassy slopes, very similar, maybe even a little bit more slope than what you see on the Roath's property. Very similar, just you can just kind of keep going through them, Melanie. That's, again, this is very typical. So when we say brush, this is how a lot of Forest Lake Bay looks, right? You don't maintain it. You leave it natural. Is there erosion under there? Maybe. But if every one of these properties said, oh, my property's eroding, I got trees, I need to put a wall in, I don't know where you draw that line, because this is the character of Forest Lake Bay, okay? If we can just go through the rest of them. I think that might be the last one, or that one. So that's all I had. Any questions that you might have? It's been difficult, I'll say. A lot of sleepless nights trying to figure out, understanding how all of this works, but I think we have an appreciation both for the history of the property and you know, the circumstances that we're facing. Any questions?
Normally, we don't have questions for public hearing, but this is a little bit different, I think, at least for me. The only question I had, there was a lot of comments, and I appreciate them. But one that you made was you had a concern over the root system being damaged to your trees.
Yes. Being cut off.
Sure. Did you by chance get, you mentioned your arborist, that's why I asked.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get a letter from your arborist that?
No, because I didn't expect that an argument was being made that the trees, and these trees were never unhealthy. They always had foliage just like they do today. The only reason why I mention our arborist is because we had some trees up at the house go down in a storm this summer. And then when they were out, my husband said, you know, my neighbor's saying that these trees are dying. And he's like, no, those trees are perfectly healthy. He said, but they are going to die in the next 5 years. So, you know, And I think I mentioned that to Ms. Curtis as well, that, you know, we're not looking to remove those trees. We're going to let them there as long as they are. I'm worried that those trees may be a hazard, you know, because they tend to lean towards the lake, and without that root structure there, with all the rain we've had, I wouldn't be surprised if they wouldn't go down in a storm. But I have no desire, if you look at my property, if you went back, you don't have to, our property is covered in trees. Well, you can't really appreciate it there, but you'd have to go back farther, Melanie, where I just say, yep, there it is. You know, our property is covered in trees. We love trees. I know, again, some of the history of the property next door. Beautiful, beautiful, gigantic blue spruce and other pine trees on that property. When it was sold to a non-resident, you know, somebody who just rented the property for a number of years, those trees were clear cut off that property. So, you know, the character has changed over time, and I'm just concerned that it doesn't fit with the character of the rest of the lake. But all I'm asking for is, as you've already mentioned, to hide the wall from the lake, to give me the full 9-foot setback that I think applies, to make sure that it is not the height it is today and then drops down where somebody could fall on my property and I would get sued. I hope it will step down. I do think it's dangerous for anybody who subsequently might buy that property and have children. And then, like I said, up at the house, our request is that there be nothing at the end of those steps. It was grass, it should go back to grass. We have so little buffer between our properties. We already have so much trouble with erosion and water flow coming off of that house. It just, compounds the confusion for the next property owners who will want to come even farther onto our property because they won't have this history, or whoever might buy our property from us, right? They won't know all that history. So as I had said to the Roaths when we discovered, I said, you know, we've always been really great neighbors. Never bothered us when your construction people were here and the kids came through here and, you know, everybody. You cannot get from their backyard to their front yard, period, on our side without being on our property. And I just simply said it's time to step back from the line. And that's all I'm asking. Let's step back the maximum from the line, and then let's make it safe. It's very simple. Anybody else?
Quickly, while you're up here, just to provide clarity for our discussion later, you said regarding the retaining wall, you said you wanted your 9-foot setback, but you also wanted a reduced retaining wall. Could you provide clarity on what your ideal situation is for the outcome of that retaining wall, just to help the discussion later on?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you do it without ripping it out and starting over, honestly. Because even if you took from the bottom of one and did like a little slopey thing, you'd still come flying off that wall and you're gonna drop, I don't know how many feet. I mean, 10 feet? It's a long drop. You should come out and look at it. Or, you know, maybe they have to put a fence on top of it, a barrier, so somebody can't fall off of it. But the side, as the side comes down, right, it needs to step down to wherever that setback is. It shouldn't just drop off like it does, the way he's got it dead-ended into the hill. Because even though it dead ends into the hill, it still creates a major drop-off. And so if somebody fell, you know, we need them far enough away from our property that we're not going to get sued.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Brian Rasmussen, the neighbor. Got a million things to say, but I'll bear you all. Can you bring up the topographical picture that had the yellow lines on it? If you drill in down by the wall, now our property is up above the wall there, but you can see those lines. The elevation is exactly the same. The top of their wall is our property, and the bottom by the lakeshore is our property. You can see where we mow, up and down, up and down. We don't have erosion there. I just don't understand how, I've lived there since the Halloween snowstorm, never saw any erosion. I just would like to understand how an engineer could show up one day and say, oh, there's erosion, so you need a wall. That just confuses me, and I wish he was here. But all I can say is I read that to get a CUP for retaining wall within 75 feet, you have to have erosion, and that was in bold letters, / confirmed erosion. And I can just confirm there was no erosion.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Jay Nygaard, 1386 West Point Road, Orono. Couple of quick questions here. When was that engineering study done? Was it done before or after the change?
It was submitted, I believe it was after.
Okay. And then there was a retaining wall there, size-wise, from what was there to now? Well, because I know in pictures I can see there was an old retaining wall there.
I wasn't provided with that information.
You don't know?
No.
Okay, thank you. I'm astounded, not really, because I dealt with the last regime here quite a bit, but it seems like unfortunately part of that regime is still operating. Last question, is that shed still there, or is that gone?
I don't have a survey for the subject property, so.
Is it still there, or is it gone? The shed? That she had in the picture, is that still there? Still there, okay. Looks like we got a history of violations from a park commissioner, a city official. Someone should obviously know better. I mean, if you're a park official, you're dealing with blueprints and zoning issues all the time. You would think that this type of thing would be right up your alley, and I'm a little astounded that Mr. Roath doesn't know where his property lines are, especially given he moved in and there's a retaining wall down by the lake, which makes it pretty obvious for anyone to see, even if it's just a little bit off. It's still pretty obvious. I don't know why we're even here tonight. This should be right now in remediation. The city shouldn't be asking, or I know the city's not asking, I don't think the city should even be entertaining right now applications for such egregious violations. I mean, this guy not only did his yard, he did his neighbor's yard. You know, and I was gonna ask about that, but it sounds like the neighbors don't want the wall there at all. They're concerned, so there's no issue to discuss that right now. But how can we even say putting other stuff in there, maybe having an engineer who comes in after the fact, design something new to replace what's going on? Mr. Roath himself admitted that he kind of greened it up and started putting the grass in. That's when he had his erosion issues. So now we've got self-inflicted erosion issues that we have to spend extra money, oh, by the way, without going to the city to find out what we can legally do. I'm just troubled by all of this. You know, and if it was just me or anybody else in the community, it wouldn't be a big deal. This is our park commission chair. This is a guy in charge of protecting the nature in this community. This is a guy who was here when they removed all the tree protections. So him saying that there's tree protections, or he's trying to save a tree, is awful silly, because the Orono ordinance protecting trees in the 0 to 75 was gotten away with last administration. There's no tree protection anymore, and I've been advocating with the council we need to restore that. We need to start bringing some of that stuff back to protect our nature. Well, you guys need to protect nature here. There are ways to restore this bluff naturally. Well, it's not really a bluff, but this hill. There are ways to do that, and I'm going to encourage you to push that option and say, you know, maybe I could see one or two little things, but this is so egregious, it's time to bring this thing back to where it was. I'm hoping you guys will listen to me on that.
Thank you.
Ryan Tuberville, 997 Wildhorse Trail, and I think this is a scenario, I think it started innocently, right? I don't think there's a guilty party here. This came out this way, and confusion on the line, whatever it is. But let's put it in context. Tonight, while you're at work, somebody put something 11 feet onto your property, and you spend the next 3 years trying to get it remediated. and now you're here before the city council. So lakeshore property, extremely valuable. 11 feet plus the setback in 2 different zones, and the victim becomes the one that has to try to figure it out. It may have been unintentional, but it's not okay to stay in, it's not okay to let it be remediated to a non-conforming piece either. Don't reward the inaction that should have been taken in the beginning. Again, whether it matters, well, it just shouldn't be rewarded anywhere. We'll set a precedence, and I do live on Forest Lake Bay, and it is a true statement that that's the nature of the bay. There are 20, 30 trees on that hillside that are all there, living, healthy, and they're just fine. It didn't need the retaining wall to hold the trees up. It's now an after-fact thought to try to get it to remain, but it really should be stripped out, put back to what it was, and not reward not going through the right action in the first place.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking a look at this, because I know it's a complex issue. My name is Barbara Schmidt, and I live at 50 Landmark Drive. Looking at this photo right here, this is a great example. If he didn't know where his lot line is, then why is his riprap exactly on the lot line? This is just, it's unbelievable. He's a park commissioner chair for over 5 years, and he doesn't know to get a permit? A permit, 1, 2, and then puts in this huge structure, and his landscaper doesn't know to get a permit? It just doesn't look good, and everybody's talking about it. And we should not let people do this and then give them an after-the-fact okay on it. You literally are opening up everybody to do that and then get an after-the-fact, wave. Thank you. Okay, good enough. No, it should be ripped out. And we need to stand up for stuff like this, because what happens is then it gets repeated all over the lake, not just in Forest Lake, but everywhere in Orono. We don't want this. Follow the rules. We have you guys sitting there so that we follow the rules. And the rules are there for a reason. And we applaud the fact that we have consistency, and we're taking care of the lake, and we're taking care of each other's properties, and we're being mindful of what we're doing. That didn't happen here. I don't know what happened, but it needs to be turned back and fixed. Thank you.
Thank you.
I gotta straighten my knees out. Steve Vielander, 5655 Alexander Drive. I sat in your shoes. I was on the Maple Plain Planning Commission for many years. I agree 100% with this lady, this gentleman, and the Rasmussens. It's ridiculous. And just go by the rules. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak, or I'll close the public hearing? Seeing nobody, we'll close it. We'll bring it back up here for discussion. Thank you, everybody, for coming and voicing your opinions on it. The history lesson is good. I have a question for staff. The first neighbor that spoke, she had a slide at the beginning that showed, if you can pull it up, it might be helpful. Just for clarification, in the 2022 patio, was that approved with that plan that was submitted on that old survey?
This plan was submitted for this permit.
This permit?
Yes.
So that patio was not permitted?
That was drawn for the permit that.
Was there a permit for that patio for 2022 when it was built?
Let me look for that and I will answer.
Maybe, unless the applicant knows.
Yeah, if you want to.
Maybe it's more of a question for the applicant. When you built the patio in 2022, did you apply for a permit for it?
No.
Okay.
No.
But there is some confusion. I don't, if you go back to picture that has the existing patio and then the new patio.
The photo?
Nope, the picture that you drew on.
Oh, this one?
Yeah. I can tell you for sure, certain that when we bought the house, the patio extended to that dotted line that says 9-foot patio extension, and the green area existed, and that was a landing at the bottom of the stairs. I don't know where Ms. Rasmussen is getting her information from, but that existed when we moved in,
You moved in 2015?
2015. Yep.
And you're saying that if I look at an aerial from 2015, I'm going to see that patio in it?
Yeah, yes, not the part that is labeled patio extension.
No, I'm just saying that I'm going to see that first patio in an aerial photo.
This is an accurate rendering and drawing of what exactly it was.
And the pavers weren't changed out.
The pavers?
Pavers for
The
that
pavers,
patio.
the pavers were changed out.
And is it
They
possible?
could not get the pavers that were underneath the deck and then expanded out a little bit at the time. They couldn't find a matching paver. So they pulled the paver back, all the pavers back to where the post is there. And then from the post out was new pavers.
And is it possible that with the size of the new pavers being different, that the total area was expanded slightly?
No, because it lined up with our mulch area that has not changed on the left side of the drawing there, and that post, the post right on the edge of the mulch area to the left that says shredded hardwood mulch, there's a post just to the right there, that, right there. That, nope, the first one, yeah, it was lined up with that post, the end of the patio.
So the stair landing was farther back.
So the what? No,
Stair landing, the green was farther back if it was lined up with that post?
It was a 6-foot landing there, and then there are steps that go down to that patio, right?
Okay. But I guess the question that the application, there was no application in 2022 for the patio.
Correct. That's why I'm here tonight.
And
To get the
then,
after-the-fact permit for that patio extension.
Is that original patio under an overhang?
The patio, when we moved in, was under the overhang, but then extended beyond. The overhang, you could,
So is that the dotted line? Is that the overhang?
that dotted line is the overhang right there, yes.
thank you, that answers my questions. Any other questions for the applicant, since he's up here?
Yeah, actually, Melanie, can you do a comparison of 2015 to 2024 of the Oriole overhead?
2015?
Yeah.
So the left side is 20.
You gotta, slightly, it's kind of to the top, Melanie. That tree casts kind of a dark shadow, but there's kind of a gray edging beyond the overhang.
And then if you slide it back, so then everything there was built without a permit?
Not everything there.
Well, other than a sliver along the edge of the house, but everything else that's in that picture right there was built as she slides it back, right?
I don't think I agree with that. I mean, back to the other drawing there,
I know, but there was no permit submitted, there was no nothing for that old drawing, so we don't have anything to validate what that drawing is, other than that drawing and then the aerial pictures that are of this. And the other thing, if you could go zoom in down closer to the lake on this.
This one I can't unlike, let me get. I don't think I can zoom in.
If you can swipe and show the lake. So when we had asked about the removal of vegetation, you said there was nothing where that wall is. From this aerial photo, it does look, as I'm looking at that paved walkway, like there is vegetation there holding that landscape.
Absolutely. There was vegetation there, yes. What wasn't there was above the wall, if you slide it over a little bit. If you draw a line that represents where the top of the wall is. Yep. Everything to the left of that was removed. Yep. That
When
was,
you removed all that, that's when the erosion started happening?
no. I mean, there was erosion all along there, but it accelerated the erosion because that wasn't there as a buffer before it got to the steep part of the hill. You have to remember, this is one grade, and then right at the top of the wall is where it increases.
Do you have that elevation still up? Do you have the elevation with the line still up? You're saying that that's pretty flat all the way to the top and there's not all that?
No, it's not flat, but it is, that you can see a slope down to the 350 line, and then it accelerates down the hill from the top of where the path starts down to the bottom of the path there.
This isn't survey level.
No, I know it's not survey, it's
either,
just,
so-
no, I get that, it's just directional if anything.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then when this erosion happened, was it before or after the unpermitted patio was put in?
The patio was built after the wall.
After the, okay.
Yeah. If you can see on the patio there, to answer your previous question, there's a fire ring or fire pit right there. If you extend kind of the end of the deck through the center of the fire pit, that was the existing patio. Everything to the left of that was existing.
Can you go back to the comparison?
What material was that patio?
The same materials as today. Exact same, they just couldn't find the same pavers, so they look a little different, but.
I know this angle's off, but you're saying at the edge of that patio there in your house.
I'm sorry?
I think you can see, we're seeing the frustration, because in 2015, we see there's no patio there, according to the aerial.
Or it's not as significant.
Or
There could have been a
Or it could have been
patio.
overgrown with grass. I don't know, but.
I don't know, but
Doesn't
I'm just,
appear
Yeah,
that.
frankly, I don't think that really matters with what's in front of us today, guys, so I don't think we need to
I think
keep
that it's
picking this
shadowed by
bone.
the tree, that's
I
the
think
problem.
I think it does, because we're looking at this application as if part of that patio existed prior to this. And there's no survey, so the only thing we have to go off of is what's in front of us, and this is in front of us.
It
think
looks
you
to me
can't
like
see
there's
the
a
patio
very
under the-
slim walkway, essentially, that kind of mirrors the roof line. You can see it's slightly lighter on the right, but it's very slim.
That, the curved part comes down
Nope,
right there?
That comes off of that.
Yeah, so what that is, and if you go back to the drawing. There's a small retaining wall that's curved right there between the red and the green arrows. That's what you're seeing right there.
Yeah, so the previous patio follows the roof line. It doesn't extend out from beyond the roof line, is what it looks like.
Right, but I'm talking about this landing area for the
Yeah.
stairs.
Oh, yeah.
I don't see that on the photo.
No.
no. But, and the photo's directional at best because it's at an angle from a million miles up and you're looking through trees because previously there was a significant amount of foliage along this line, it looked like. But again, I'm concerned because this makes it look like it comes all the way out to the edge of the house and I just can't make that, or the edge of
Yeah.
the patio, and I just can't make that in any of the photos and I don't have anything to validate.
Yeah, I could try and pick some photos up if that's what you're.
I have a question. Were the stairs there?
Sure.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Were the stairs there previous to you buying the house?
The stairs to the deck, yes, they were there.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'm just trying to grasp as to where we are. Are we asking questions to the applicant, or are we in discussion?
We're in discussion, but we had him clarify some points.
Okay.
Yep. So if there's anything else for the applicant while he's up here, otherwise we can bring it back for discussion. Thank you. Yep. So I don't know if that really clarified where my head was on the existing landing for the stairs or not, because, but I understand now that the application that the neighbor was referring to is the one for this one, but that's on a previous survey that isn't. So I think when we look at this, I think it's great that the applicant is here and willfully trying to comply and put something before us that we can look at and try to figure out a solution for. So I think that's great. I think we kind of have to look at this as two different items. I think we need to look at the patio hardcover and that setback and pick that apart, and then retaining wall piece. I think that's where my mind is headed. And with any of these after-the-fact variances, they're challenging for certain, and it's hard to go back in time and look at it without that stuff there, or put that hat on. What would we have approved? What could we have approved? Would we have approved anything prior to the improvements being put in? So those are obviously the hard questions. So I would love some opinion from the commissioners here about the patio and the proposed solution from the applicant, and what we could get behind on just the patio piece.
Yeah.
And then we can discuss the wall later.
I think that's a good way to start. I think you really have to look at it as two. And in my opinion, even though this is an after effect, and I looked through the agenda and I was trying to figure out, my thought was I need to take this as this is a new application. And this is all the information we have before us and everything that's been presented, and go from what would we do if we were asked to approve this right now. This one, I have an issue with, and it kind of alluded with the runoff. Like I lived through this, so I know that when you build that close to a lot, if you haven't done anything, that there is runoff, and the runoff is damaging the neighboring property. It's going to cause an issue. I struggle with a lot of the improvement that's in the red, especially if there's nothing done to address that. It's just so close to the property line that it's going to cause an issue with their yard, just hands down, right? The people who are going to be walking into their yard, there's just too many issues. And my perspective is it needs to be tapered off from what that landing originally was, and then in the other space, based on his allowable hardcover, he can do whatever he wants over there and make it look pretty, but he has to have some level of acknowledgement that this is here. I need to do the bare minimum that gets me off the stairs and onto the landing here, and I need to accommodate for the runoff with whatever that is to make sure that the runoff from that small landing is taken care of, and then I can build this beautiful patio in the rest of the space that I have plenty of hardcover. That's
I tend to agree with you.
I can jump in quick. I think, thank you everyone for the public input. That's an important role. I just want to first say that this is obviously a little contentious. Thank you both for being willing to work together. I think that's a big step, but for us to uphold city code and the property rights, I think both, everyone involved here, I don't want to say both, everyone involved as property owners has some, a little bit of skin in the game and not knowing where their property lines are. I think that's an important thing to note. I think everyone needs to be held accountable here. I think it's important to note there's existing conditions that were previously approved to allow the house slightly within the setback. How the stairs ended up further in the setback sounds like that was a pre-existing condition that the current homeowner took. And from my personal experience building a deck, there is a required landing that needs to meet city code. So while we just talk about the landing in this patio here, I think some form of a landing, at the bottom of the stairs that's shown in green, I could get behind. I agree with the other commissioner's words that what's in red doesn't seem to be necessary and should be removed. The rest of the patio, I don't think that is, in terms of the 9-foot extension, I don't think there's any issues with that, again, outside of what's in red. And again, it sounds like both parties are willing to work with each other, so hopefully you guys can find a solution, or we can help propose a solution that meets, what's required for a landing, but also doesn't extend into the setback that's there. I also think, I've heard a lot of different things about erosion. Again, the existing conditions, there's going to be runoff that falls onto the neighboring property. If there's any way to improve that, that's great, but again, that's also an existing condition that when the house was built where it was built, unfortunately is just a result of that. But if there is an opportunity, it sounds like this is a great time to fix any of that erosion runoff as we resolve the patio issue here. And I'll stop there and save my words for the retaining wall for later.
Quick question. Your comments about the patio, do you feel that the applicant's proposal to remedy it with this radius and reduce the size, do you think that fits what you'd like to see?
I would not. I would prefer just what's in green, basically. The minimum required to create a safe landing area and have, it looks like, room there to get over to the rest of their patio. The additional, what's in new and red there, to me is adding to runoff onto the neighboring property and is within the setback, which would require a variance that I frankly am not in support of currently. I could be change my mind, but that's where I stand right now.
Since you brought it up, can I ask staff, is there a requirement for a landing or guidance in code for a landing for a stairway?
The building code would dictate that, and I am not sure if it has to be an improved area or just a level grade. That is a building official, that's in her realm.
I concur, and a little troubled by the phraseology of, it was kind of within our living area or within our natural living area, because it is imposing on the neighbor's property. And I do, I'm sensitive to the fact that that kind of encroachment can grow over time. And I think that's really important, that we uphold our own property rights. I concur that I'm concerned about what's in the red, and I would like to see some kind of drainage or planting. The last thing we want is all of the water from the roof and this larger patio being directed across that very close property line.
I'm in agreement that pushing a bit further back on that dotted line is necessary here. I agree that some room for a safe landing at the bottom of this makes sense, but likely minimizing the hard cover with the red shaded area of the setback there is probably going to be important here. I'll just say, I'm also empathetic to the idea that you're not always certain where your neighbor's property lines are. I'm a little uncertain of it in my own house myself, but I think that's why these processes exist, right? It's to make sure we're certain of these things and we measure twice before we cut once. Bodies like this get a lot of criticism for holding things up, but I think this is just a good example of why these processes exist. It's to protect homeowners and the property line. I'm in agreement with the other commissioners that pulling that patio back a bit further seems essential.
I would also challenge the fact that what is shown here on green as previous existing was in fact previous because of the aerial photographs that we were looking at. I do see a smaller rectangle that kind of bifurcates that green area that is appears to be closer, more closely aligned with the roof line parallel, and it would not surprise me if that green area was actually up a little bit higher than it's being shown on this particular drawing coming from the applicant.
How does the commission feel about a connection between that landing and the extension of the patio? It appears that it potentially, if that landing was there, it looks like it probably connected to the existing patio, call it. But extending the patio, you're creating your own condition and then asking for an extension within the setback. I'm curious how everybody feels.
Yeah, when I look at this, I think our Commissioner makes a good point. Like, he stated that that dotted line that curves was a retaining wall. And if this was all grass, then there was maybe an impervious small landing at the bottom of the stairs, but it was dirt between there to get around, or grass. To your question, I think that what's there needs to stay what was there, and it's a small landing at the bottom. And if the connection goes between there and over the red, then I don't see support for it. I think it should stay grass or mulch or something.
It's very easy to put like a small stepping stone or two, but I don't think you need to extend the patio in such a way that it connects fully. It also could connect to the left. It doesn't have to connect going towards the lake, in my opinion.
That's kind of my thought on it, is it looked like there potentially was a connection before, but it doesn't necessarily need to connect to the new extension portion, even though it would, because it's contiguous. It's just one is under the deck, or one is under cover and one isn't. I'm just going back to, like, if we were approving this from an application, would we allow anything in that hard cover, or in the, the setback side? I think a connection is reasonable, but it's,
I mean, I can see where there would be a very small, almost where that thin black line rectangle is. That would be reasonable, about 3 feet, and it connects to the left. But all of this is within that 7.5-foot setback, and I don't think that we would be approving additional patio to be built beyond what may be necessary to connect the bottom of the stairs over to the left.
Yeah. I think, because what we're asked right now is to give direction for this.
I think where I'd like the discussion to go here is so that we can, it seems like the applicant's willing to make some modifications from what he's proposing for this patio extension, we'll call it, and how it connects to the stairs and the portion that's over the right-of-way, or the setback, sorry. And so if we can come up with a consensus, because I feel like nobody here, well, I haven't heard from all the commissioners yet, but nobody feels that this meets something that we would approve.
No, I think
patio piece. So if we can give him direction in the event that I think this is most likely going to get tabled, and he could potentially come back with something that we could approve, that's kind of where I'm hoping the discussion leads, at least on this.
And I think, kind of based off that, my direction would be to have something new designed that has a small landing and shows us some options of how it would connect to the existing deck. And I'm good at visualizing, but I would like to give some leeway to say, here, show us what it is, knowing that we want the least amount of impact. And if it's paver steps that are spaced out and it looks good and it is going to minimize the runoff, then I would be in support of that. That's what you're looking for.
Just wanted to add one thing. First of all, I appreciate an opportunity to come back and redo this. The landing that's in the green that was existing before, I want to make sure everyone understands that's at a grade higher than the rest of the patio. Okay, I don't know whether I said that before or not, but where it existed before, that landing to the left were additional steps to go down to the patio. As it exists today, too. Can you bring up my pictures from today they sent?
you're saying the hardcover was there, but you've actually changed the elevation and brought that up.
I haven't changed the elevation, no. It was always, the patio was always lower than where the landing was from the steps.
Is it lower today?
It is, no. Yes, it is lower today. The landing is at the same elevation as it was, and it's the same size as it was. Patio is at the same elevation as it was. And if you can see it in.
So are the steps there? The steps are still there?
There are steps, yeah.
Okay, got it, yeah.
Brian, were they in, were they in?
Sent you an email with a couple.
Okay. There.
I just wanted to clarify that before you guys give me some recommendations on how to move forward. I want to make sure that you knew what we're dealing with.
I got the I'm looking for it, but I got the email with your.
How about the, I guess I'll have to provide some more
I don't
detail
think I
on this.
have an email. Make sure it's today.
Okay,
I'm not.
okay, that's fine.
Thanks for
My
that.
point is that when you come down the stairs and you hit that landing, you still have a big drop off to get to the elevation.
You can see that
That's why you
in
can,
the photos that were provided by Ms. Rasmussen.
okay, so that's what I was asking for as far as this transition area that goes through the red is additional space so that I could step down onto that other patio.
Yeah.
I think the commissioner mentioned before just putting a paver or a stepping stone or something like that, but you're at, it's at a slope right there that I don't really put that there, so.
So just to be clear, so on this drawing right here, the stairs, those are the wood stairs that come down from the deck, correct?
No wood stairs there. They're all paver stairs.
So those are paver stairs.
Where it says stairs right there, coming down from your deck.
Oh,
What are
I'm
those
sorry.
made of?
I'm sorry. Those are wood stairs, yes.
And then they land at the green. And before you built this extension, how did you get off of that?
There were steps going diagonal. That's the diagonal area there, where the green arrow lands. You would turn and go.
Like a triangle.
Yeah, you would go back and access the patio that way. And then there was that small retaining wall right there to separate the existing patio from the drop-off to the grade.
So then that green area right there, where is that in relation to the new patio? How high up is that?
It's exactly the same.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask you to do one thing before you finish your conversation?
Sure.
You could go back to the actual certified survey, which this is not.
Yeah.
You will see that the property line runs to that tiny little step, the first step. Anything beyond that crosses the property line. Do you see that? The dark black line is the property line. That little tiny part is the landing. Anything you approve beyond that is on my property.
The white part you're saying was the existing landing that Melanie's putting her.
That is the only part that is on his property.
Yep, and it's
Okay.
still within the 7.5-foot setback, and it looks.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, anything beyond that extends
Yeah.
into my property. So, let's make sure that future plans are on a survey and not just a drawing, please.
Thank you. So, we're still talking about this,
Can I maybe propose?
patio and, yes,
Sorry,
go
I don't
ahead.
mean to interrupt. It sounds like that there is a landing there. From what I can kind of see in a packet that Ms. Rasmussen submitted, there is, I don't know if it's 4 foot by 4 foot, but there's a landing area there. And currently, there's steps that go down, and then there's more steps that go down to the yard. It sounds like a reasonable ask from our commission is to leave the landing area there that you can slightly see, I assume there's no more steps. I assume it goes from those wood stairs to that landing that looks about 4 feet maybe. Instead of continuing the stairs there and then more stairs to the yard, that is what, from my perspective, needs to be removed because it's within the setback. And really, that landing area that we can see should have stairs to the right to get them to their existing patio. That's what I see as a solution here. I'm not an engineer, I know that's not our job, but I think that's something that everyone can get behind. It gives access to the existing stairs, but I understand that the rest of what's in the image there is within the setback and not necessary.
Yep, well said. I think the only portion that we'd be in favor of approving in the setback would be a small connection from that landing to the previously built patio that heads the opposite direction of the property line. Least
And we're talking
impactful on the
like
neighbor.
4 feet.
Whatever to connect it. I think we could get behind
Again, there's
connection.
building
I mean,
code,
towards
that's a
the-
requirement.
Yeah, towards the,
Question for staff. If none of that new patio was in the setback, does it meet and conform with code as far as hardcover, et cetera?
Yes.
The portion's not in the setback?
Correct.
I believe so.
Okay, that's what we were assuming. I just wanted clarification. So,
From my reading, the hardcover represents 24%. Previously it was 23%. It's arguable what was there versus not in March of 2015. I don't think that's for us to determine today. I obviously am in the position of tabling this because we have some unfinished business on where things are going. I can appreciate that the applicant is working with staff to rectify and repair some of the differences with the neighbor. My heart hurts a little bit for neighbors of 10 years to be here. I hope that gets patched up and fixed because I agree with one of the public comments that I'm going to give benefit of the doubt that this was not on purpose. And we've talked about how property lines are existing versus how they're maintained are very different in lakeshore districts in particular. I in particular found out that my property line went halfway into my neighbor's driveway. It's been in my family since the 60s. We never knew. We fixed it the right way. We did a permit. We did a lot line rearrangement from staff's guidance as to how they recommend we do that. It was an equal split because that was one of the things that the staff recommended, and we did it. Lakeshore districts are tricky. They're very tight. If you look at the undulations of the lot line of the neighboring property, you can see that. I'm not in a position to have a take tonight on the 7.5 versus 9 feet for pavers or for retaining wall. I'm grateful that the applicant is trying to at least fix the encroachment first and foremost. Let's all be mindful that there's also going to be an engineering reviewing stormwater runoff of whatever is being proposed, whether it's here or later, because that is one thing that's in place when you have an application. I'm going to give benefit of the doubt to the applicant also that they did not know that there needed to be a permit, simply based on the fact that I recognize he's a park commissioner, and I appreciate that volunteering to be there for our city. And there's going to be always differences, and I can appreciate them as well. But we're all here for our city. And I never knew the applicant before tonight, and I've been on the planning commission for almost 8 years. That just tells you how different we all are. We all have jobs, and I don't know what the rules are of the park commission. I'm going to give him benefit of the doubt that maybe he didn't know necessarily when you're triggered to pull a permit for removing brush versus not. But again, I'm giving benefit of the doubt of that leeway just as I would any other applicant in this city. I do believe there are tree protections within this 75 foot, and I don't think that changed in the last 10 years. Replacing trees that are in the 75 feet, my understanding, staff, please correct me, There's still things that need to be mitigated and approved to be done. So please interrupt me and tell me that I'm wrong, if I'm wrong. Okay, thank you. So I appreciate that clarification as well. With that being said, I'm willing to motion to table this, give it some time for the applicant to work with staff and find out what's reasonable. I think I think that's a starting point, and he's already demonstrated his willingness to do that, and I hope that this gets better. And I hope neighbors can get along again.
That, that addresses the patio issue. We still need to speak to the retaining walls to give direction there, but I agree with your inclination to table this with some clear direction, and I agree it's beneficial that the applicant is willing to work with staff in the city to find a reasonable accommodation.
Yeah, and as far as the retaining wall is concerned, you know, memorializing lakeshore and bluffs and retaining walls, we've seen after the fact variances, even recently we have. They're not fun because in the most recent one, we actually gave very clear direction as to what we wanted to see, and it was something different that it ended up with, and that was unfortunate. It was a tough conversation. We got through it, but it was a tough conversation, and nobody enjoys them, but at the end of the day, intent is not always determined, but when you're looking at the retaining wall, I recognize the public comment by the neighbor of concern about the elevation of that. I think that's one reason when we come up with our city language talking about 2 feet before we want to take a look at it as a trigger for a variance versus a conditional use permit. I think that's very glaring as to one of the reasons, as well as the massing, because it becomes more prevalent to exist when it's more than 2 feet. All of those things are relevant here. As far as how the property was maintained and whether the runoff was impacted for better or for worse, again, that's one reason when you have these applications, we get direction and applicants get direction from staff, which is what put me on the Planning Commission. I came and applied for things, staff gave me direction, I applied the direction that was given to me. One of them would be engineering reports and opinions on conditions and how they can be mitigated and whether they are mitigating, whether they're successful. When we look at bluffs, we want that engineering to say this is not going to fail. We don't want to come back here and do it again, right? All of those things. So now that this is an application, we are going to have structure and requirements that will at least help. But it's hard to go back in time and figure out if this was something that was managed, those trees were being saved, or those trees were being hindered or potentially dying after the fact. That's really difficult. But I think if there is a professional arborist letter that states that, to say that it's not would be calling that professional arborist a liar, and I'm not a professional arborist, so, you know, I think that's one of the reasons why I had a question for public comment was if there was a professional arborist that contradicted that other one, because that is a grievance, right? So I'm sure there'll be more discussion, but I will be prepared to motion to table this and hope that we can have some better clarification and more direction after that. But if to answer your question, Commissioner Perkle, I think obviously the starting point is to see if we can get that engineer to, or that arborist or the landscape architect or anybody else that's professionally trained on this to change that retaining wall to not encroach on the neighboring property, for one thing. For another, B, can you do that without exceeding a 2-foot height? So it eliminates that part of the variance where it just becomes a conditional use permit. I love that, but I'm not an architect. I don't know that that's possible. And then see what we're working with.
And I would just add that not only encroaching on the neighbor's property, but encroaching within the required setback, whatever we determine that to be.
Right. And-
The wall should be removed from the setback as well as encroaching on the neighbor's property, in my opinion.
Right, and so fast forward, again, just going through this in your mind, and again, I'm not here to tell everybody else how to feel, that's what's awesome about this, we all have our opinions. But I could see a letter coming back saying there's a tree right on the property line within that setback. How are we supposed to not put a retaining wall to retain that tree root structure without imposing that wall within the setback? That is what a variance is for, right? Among other things. And I'm not saying that that's what's gonna happen, but that's why we ask a professional to write their letter, to put their stamp on it, right? And I know that our staff will probably do a nice job of giving that direction. So I rambled a lot, that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Question for staff, another clarification. The conditions for retaining wall is strictly for erosion, it's not for tree preservation, correct?
Correct.
And if we're, now that we're, I think, just so the applicant can see where we're at with this, I think, hopefully understand where we're at on the patio piece. And so if we see a modification, that's what we'd like to see in that modification, because what's in front of us, we can't approve. When it comes to the retaining wall, I think that's a whole another discussion here. And I think it'd be good to have a good chunk of that now before the applicant comes back, so we can kind of know where to go if we modify it. I don't believe anybody up here is in favor of the proposed remedy for the walls right now. I think in my mind, it's really hard to go back in time, like I said before, and it's very clear that the code requires active erosion to create a retaining wall there, especially one of this size. Unless, and correct me if I'm wrong, unless it's under 2 feet. Is that the correct interpretation?
A wall 2 feet or less can be within the 5-foot setback.
Without a variance or without having to prove the erosion?
Without a variance. I mean, the CUP is still there
The CUP condition still has to prove the erosion.
because it's within the 75-foot setback. But the side lot line, you're allowed a wall under 2 feet to go to the property line.
To go to the, under 2 feet can be within the setback
Yes,
to the property line.
yes. I mean, other conditions such as drainage and those things taken into consideration, but just strictly the setback and the height, that's what it is.
Got it. Thank you for that clarification. So I'd like to hear from other commissioners on what their take on a solution for this wall would be, what their thoughts are, knowing that I don't think anyone here is going to approve what is there.
Just to restate and clarify my position, we do have a letter from the arborist stating that the trees would be impacted, or that was the reason. So I don't know if that constitutes erosion control or not.
Well, it does, well, okay. I see where we're going.
It does to
Yeah.
me.
Okay.
And that, I guess that's my position. I would love to have that be less than 2 feet within the 7.5, outside the 7.5-foot setback. I just don't know if that's real. Like, I'd love to see that possible. I just don't know that it's possible. So realistically speaking, I just want to prepare for the fact that it's not, and say, okay, if it's not possible, then I guess I would be willing to consider, the alternative. But I think one of the other questions was, have you explored other ways to do this? No, I don't know any other way to do this, right? I want to keep the trees there.
I appreciate your context, Commissioner Ressler, about, we're not experts in this space. And so I guess my thought process would be to engage someone who is an expert in order to come up with a plan. Now, I do have concerns about the neighbors having contradicting experts and the neighbors feeling comfortable or confident with the expert that was selected. You almost need like a neutral third party to come in and help create a mitigation plan for how this could be dealt with in a way that is neutral and not prioritizing one neighbor or the other.
think that's beyond our scope.
Yeah,
I mean, we have to look at the applications in front of us and that application's expert and what they bring to the table. And then obviously, if there's other information. Right? But it would be great.
I think it
like
would
that,
mend
yeah.
fences too.
Yes, it would.
I think one thing that would help from a staff standpoint is to have, obviously, like some survey data where it's accurate, so we know exactly what we're talking about, which would also provide clarity on like this exhibit, as far as whose tree are we impacting, because this application is from the property line in, not the neighbor's property.
Right.
That's a different resolution. So I think clarity on those aspects of this would be helpful, to guide how.
What we're seeing in this application is not a certified survey as far as the layout.
No, I mean, the neighbor, the Rasmussen.
Neighbor has
provided
one.
this survey.
Yes.
Doesn't show any trees, and it doesn't show the extent of the walls or the topography or all the other things that we would ask for a permit on the front end. So, I mean, I think that's kind of key to staff working with the applicant to guide them on how and what to change to get to the point of whether they need this variance anymore for the setback or what, but the, fact of the matter is the walls are there and we can get some clarity.
Ask a question about, if the Rasmussens have already paid for surveys, and they've been, kind of now forced to, come up with a solution, who pays for the survey that is needed in order to rectify what's on their side of the property
It's
line?
a civil thing that we don't get involved in.
Okay.
Between the two neighbors.
Okay.
But for the application, he
For the
would have been
application,
required,
The survey work that would be required for this application should be on the property.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, what we ask for data is an extension off the property to understand how any impact is going to impact that neighbor. So there is a little bleed over, but, I mean, that's the applicant's
but
responsibility.
the applicant hasn't paid for a survey.
Pardon?
When the applicant came to this after the fact, variance.
They did not submit a survey, no.
So we can ask.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, that isn't a requirement of the CUP for the retaining wall? I mean, it clearly
We
wasn't.
asked for information to bring this to you and to get as much information as we can. That's what we have.
Okay, thank you.
Wait, clarification again. Is it a requirement of the CUP to have the survey?
We need the most information possible.
Okay.
So yes, I mean, typically, that is where that information comes from. Some of that information can be a certified site plan that a landscape architect or an architect can prepare, but the type of application will dictate the level of information that we require. A survey is required for a new home, or, development of a lot or new home or a significant addition, or a project like this certainly could trigger the need for a survey because the information has to be supported.
It's at staff's discretion as far as the,
We are required to get, what we need is to understand the topography, the top and bottom of wall, drainage patterns, and sometimes landscape architects and sometimes other professionals can provide that data. So to say a survey is required isn't necessarily a statement that staff can make. However, that typically is the easiest way to provide that data if the applicant doesn't have it already or isn't working with like a landscape architect or other professionals. So oftentimes, most of the time, you'll see a survey to give us that data. But what we need is the topography, top and bottom of wall, drainage patterns, to review kind of these retaining wall information.
thank you for that clarity.
All right, so I can organize my opinion here. Yes, I would love to see the retaining wall not encroach upon 7.5 feet. If there's somebody that has a plan that would allow it to do that, I don't know that they can. But that, sure, I'd love to see that. I'd love for the retaining wall to not exceed 2 feet. Again, I don't know that that's possible, but sure, I would love to see that if it's possible. As far as the patio pavers is within 75 feet, that's a hard one. We don't usually have a lot of leeway. We have in the past. minor amounts. Minor is arguable. We're going 23 to 24%. As a percentage, it's below the 25% hardcover requirement. That's something I'm mindful of, but yet we are still within the 75 feet. I think it's a good demonstration to improve where it is as a means for getting latitude on other things in this application, if I can say that. You know, yes, we have approved within the 75 foot before. Yes, it's important that we are below the 25% hardcover, which we are, and yes, we are not egregiously increasing the hardcover and being mindful that we are still going to require stormwater runoff plans that says it's being managed on whatever's being proposed. I think that's helpful too. And that doesn't need to be a condition for us when it's a variance. With that said, I don't know if anybody else disagrees with anything I said. If they want it to be 9 feet, because that was mentioned before, or they.
Question about the 9 foot or the 7.5 foot, the setback.
5 foot, right?
5.
For 2 foot or less.
Walls.
Over 2 feet have to be 5 feet from the property line.
Okay.
Under 2 feet can go up to the property line.
7 or 9 doesn't apply.
But I'm just, the section of the code that she found that says an improvement or a structure over a certain height triggers the fence
So
over the
there's
height.
there's a lot of different overlapping codes, and the code that is allowing the 2 foot high wall in the 5 foot is in the non-encroachment section, the
Permitted
permitted
encroach-
encroachments. So it's allowed. at
Up to 2 feet high, yeah.
Yes.
But anything over 2 feet, so if we go to a combined tiered wall of 10 feet, does
We
that?
don't- So there's multiple things that she had in her presentation, and they don't all apply the way they were written. So
I'm just trying to understand how it doesn't apply, because it did seem like it applied because it was a combined.
because you're not reading it in
Okay.
context. Yes, so I mean, we can review that to make sure that we are applying the code correctly, but we're not gonna debate that here because we've already done the
Okay.
analysis. I will say that the patio area and that 7.5 foot exception, I don't have a survey for Mr. Roath's property. So I don't know the exact width of his property to apply that setback, and when we measured it, that's where it landed, so, we can confirm that, and I'll work with the property owner on that. But, I'd be happy to walk through the code with you to that fence height and those other pieces of it, but that isn't what we're,
Okay,
it just makes it'll just make it all more confusing.
I appreciate that, Ms. Curtis. I'll amend my perspective here, I guess, knowing that if it's less than 2 feet, or 2 feet or less, I should say, it can go right to the property line. You know, I obviously am supportive if our, city code allows it to be that way. I think that's great, and even better if it's only 2 feet or less within that 5 feet, and if it's more than that, inland of the property line, I would be supportive of that even, but again, it still comes back to what a landscape architect or arborist can come up with to how to manage this, because it still needs to pass stormwater management. So that's the one amendment that I guess I'll make to the comments I made. If anybody disagrees with that or has anything in addition, let me know, otherwise I'll motion to table based on that feedback, along with the feedback, just to be super clear. I think the applicant already knows, but a topographical survey would be very helpful.
I think much like the changes to the patio, it seems we should leave the applicant some flexibility here in terms of how they might want to change the wall to bring it closer to city code. I don't think we necessarily need to say exactly what that looks like, but I am aligned with the direction that you outlined in terms of reducing the height, and obviously getting off the property line there. In addition to probably conducting a survey, it feels like that could be a
and I think it's important to clarify that there needs to be something that confirms that
Erosion.
that there's erosion.
Yeah. Yeah, and I
Not-
think,
Not the person who built the wall or something else, but like somebody to come up and say, yes, here is a distinction of erosion, not, oh, we think these oak trees are dying.
I agree, that would be helpful for me as well. It's hard to get that after the fact, I think, to look at something that's now been retained and say, yes, this was erosion, unless the applicant has photographs or something that they can bring in, which I think would be helpful in this.
I think, but you could also look at it the other way, and it could be, can somebody justify creating a slope that doesn't create erosion, removing the retaining wall?
Possible to undo, and undo it without further erosion. The only thing I would also add to Commissioner Ressler's pointed feedback is the discussion around further screening with additional plantings, because I know that's something that we require generally, and it does look quite bare right now.
Typically, a landscape plan is accompanied with these to show how the retaining wall be screened, et cetera.
That photo was from 2021.
Okay.
I will say, I visited the property and researching this a bit more, and it was much better covered than
Yeah, and a good spot maybe for screening would be the top of those ledges. For safety reasons, 'cause it does provide some help. Again, feedback, we're hopefully giving some direction for this to come back. All right, I'm going to motion to table LA 25-36 for further discussion and additional information based on the discussion we had tonight.
I'll second.
We have a motion to table by Commissioner Ressler, a second by Commissioner Perkel. Any further discussion?
One thing I just want to add, because there's been a lot of continuity around this, I think with any changes made to the hardcover for the pavers, we need a real hardcover calculation that accounts for all of the structures on the property, not selected ones.
We have that on this
think-
application, don't we?
I don't know, it didn't look
Was
like,
a hardcover calculation.
Shed.
work-
it didn't include
Exhibit
it. I
J,
don't think it included it.
hardcover worksheet, is proposed, well, existing hardcover is total lot area of 27,859, which is 23%. Proposed is 27,859, which is 24%, roughly, or is that a 400, less than 400 square foot difference? I believe it guides for 25%.
It seemed like there were some things like the fire pit missing and some other things, so that's where.
The site survey should help
Cover
clarify
calculations
that.
do account for those.
Yeah, this is from 7/23 of 2025.
Page 29, Exhibit J.
Site survey that staff receives would be able to verify those numbers when we do get that.
Yep.
Cool. Okay, so we have a discussion.
Great point.
Do we want to move forward with this motion with any specific direction from this body, or will that be summarized by?
There won't be a direction, it'll be coming back to us, and then, yeah, staff will, and since the applicant is here, he can see our kind of our wishes. That being said, he could come back with the exact same application. So, it's up to them. I don't think that's the willing, I think there is willingness here to try to get something that we can approve. The neighbors will be happy with, so I'm glad that everybody's sitting in a room together trying to work this out. So any further discussion? All in favor? Say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries, will be tabled into the next planning commission meeting.